Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared, the podcast.
I'm your host, Madeline.
And I'm your co-host, David.
All right. Today, we have a doozy of an episode.
Yeah, it's Heritage Foundation, right?
The Heritage Foundation, yes. I feel like it's one of those things that, like, when you look into things, it's just a name that pops up over and over and over again.
Did I tell you once I applied for a job there?
No, I missed that. I just, like, spit my beverage out. Like, what? Tell that story.
I didn't even get to interview stage, and, like, they didn't say what it was. It was just on, like, Glassdoor or whatever, and it was, like, writing job for a think tank, and I was like, okay,
yeah,
I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I know how words work. And then, like, by the time, like, they did, like, the, like, pre-interview phone call thing.
Uh-huh.
And they were like, so, like, would you be really interested in doing, like, things that are, like, kind of, like, libertarian? Like, what's your view? They were asking me some questions about what my views were.
Right.
And I was like, well, so I, like, because I thought it was one of the, like, liberally type think tanks.
Yeah.
So it was like, you know, here's the thing. I think, like, anyone who gets all verklempt over, like, Marxist-Leninists versus Trotskyists is, like, they're cosplaying.
Yeah.
And I just say I'm, like, a Marxist. Like, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, the Heritage Foundation would not be too into hiring a Marxist. Well, this is going to be what our episode is going to be about, and it's inspired by the fact that on TikTok, lots of kids have been asking me to talk about Project 2025, and I hadn't really heard of it. But when I looked it up, I was like, this is just some Heritage Foundation bullshit. Mm-hmm. And everybody else was kind of like, what do you mean? And I was like, they're, like, always doing this. And then I realized that we never done an episode about the Heritage Foundation. And I think it would be a good thing for us to get into. So, before we get into the episode, I just want to remind everybody that you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/pickmeup. We did not do our bonus content last month, but we do have bonus content coming out this month.
We're recording it tomorrow. Are you not interested in the Cambridge 5,
I'm very
Madeline?
interested in the Cambridge 5. I have been having a lot of personal issues lately that make it hard. That make life hard for me. You know, I'm a very busy person. I do a lot. And I'm really, really good at, like, Energizer Bunny, like, go to get all of this stuff done. But I've reached a point where my energy, I just need a break. I'm kind of in burnout mode. Mm-hmm. So my version of burnout mode is that I do, like, 90% of what it's expected of me, but not the remaining 10%. And that's why every time it comes time where it's like, let's record the bonus episode today, I'm like, we have all month and I'm so burnt out.
No,
we will be doing it.
Okay, first of all, you're coming to my place.
I will come to your place. It's looking very nice. You have a coffee table.
I have the heaviest coffee table that's ever existed.
I just love that this coffee table came from our friend's house who got it from my ex-boyfriend of 10 years.
It's staying in the family.
It's a good coffee table. Yeah, that coffee table's seen a lot.
Including me carrying it from my garage to my apartment.
Yeah.
By myself.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. It's solid wood, that thing.
Which sucked.
Yeah.
But, no, I mean, you know, no fork barking. Or you can bring fork.
She'll come to your house and bark there. Yeah. She's been really barky today. She's got a lot to say. I'm sure you guys are going to hear Fork on this episode more than usual. So I'm trying to think if there's any other kind of general bookkeeping. If you like the podcast, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps. If you're on Spotify, you can always reply to our question, what you thought about the episode. We like reading those.
Do you want to do bookkeeping?
Oh, gosh. If you haven't checked out the book still is available for sale, or you can listen to it on Spotify as an audiobook. So,
it's on Spotify.
Yeah, it's on Spotify as an audiobook.
Maybe I might listen.
You don't want to listen to it.
I haven't. Did you read it?
Of course I read it.
Okay.
You don't want to hear that.
I feel like I might learn something.
Considering I had to run all the books about, like, my teenage years, all those chapters about my teenage years by you to make sure I wasn't radically misremembering something, I think you might know more than I do about my life at this point.
I still think the dates on your first apartment are wrong.
I don't know. I don't think they are because my mother corroborated.
No, I remember when a friend of ours threw my 18th birthday at his apartment on Olive.
It was Ryan.
Yeah.
And your 18th birthday was when?
April.
April. And my
What,
birthday
do you want me to give you
August.
my chart? I had my chart read. Did I tell you?
My birthday is August, so that means that I probably moved somewhere.
No, I
between
think
those
you were
months.
17.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I was
Oh,
17.
okay, yeah.
No, because my mom said I was 17. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had my chart done this week by a psychic.
Yeah, you and I both had some weird psychic experiences. That's how you know we were not operating at peak mental health. You and I both, independent of each other, had encounters with psychics.
I think that psychic was trying to make me cry.
Yeah, I think my psychic was trying to make me feel really good about myself, so I gave her a lot of money to keep telling me good things about myself.
I think the psychic realized I didn't have money to give her.
And it was just like, I'm going to make you rue the day you came in here.
So that everyone is like, wow, she's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. We had challenging psychic interactions this month.
Yeah, the stars were not in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I got a lot going on. I'm a little stressed out, but you just keep on going.
You're just you're
One
doing
foot in
it.
front of the other.
Hell yeah.
And then 5.5 years later, you wake up and you're in Malta, retired.
The Malta thing, I'm seeing Humphrey Bogart for you, Ingrid Bergman,
Right.
Casablanca.
Yeah. No, I think that what if I just become like an EDM club kid? But I'm like 45.
I have seen you in club situations.
Yeah.
What do you always say?
What?
You like a bar where you can sit down.
I do. I do enjoy a bar where I can sit down, but I feel like I can really adapt to a club scenario. I like to dance. I like to talk to strangers. What, have you never seen me dance?
No, I've seen all of this.
Yeah.
Remember when your friend took us to that like weird warehouse party that turned out to be just like USC frat bro?
Oh, I did not enjoy that one.
That was
really bad. That was not a fun party. But I did like that my friend was like, whatever, let's just pretend it's fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, that was a weird one. Okay, well, anyway, our life has been hard, both of our lives, separate from each other.
Ugh.
But we will be doing the bonus episodes this month over on our Patreon. So if you want more content, that's where you get it. And we also have a backlog of really interesting episodes there that you can listen to if you sign up too. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, give us your ideas for type of content you would like to see. Like even not episodes. Like if there's just random things that are helpful. Like I know when I did the budgeting stuff, some people found it helpful. I was kind of thinking maybe an updated shopping list since groceries are so much more expensive now. I don't know, whatever you guys think.
Some
Let us
people
know.
have asked for like literature recommendations. And
Oh,
I
we
feel
should
like
do a
that's
reading list.
I have been wanting to do like a book club as a thing.
Yeah.
Someone was talking to me the other night about book club. He was
We
like,
used to do a book club.
I feel like we could do a book club.
We could do a book club. Yeah.
There's a great book, I can't remember the author, but Red's The Tragedy of the American Communist Party that just came out that I've been looking at, and I feel like that would be up our alley.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so that's all out of the way. Let's get into this episode. So, David, you have not heard of Project 2025.
No.
All right, so Project 2025, when I looked it up, and I was like, this just looks like normal Heritage Foundation stuff. Basically, Project 2025 is the conservative right wing of the United States, their plan for what will happen in 2025 when they are certain, a Republican president back in office. So, Project 2025 is basically a manifesto of all the policies they're going to try to enact in every single department, like every department, like Department of Energy, Department of Agriculture, whatever. And it's also going along with this kind of like a database of people who work in politics in Washington who are like conservatively minded in a similar way, who you would be able to say you just become the president in January and you're like, I want to hit the ground running. You could go into this database and you could just do all of your staffing straight from it. And everybody you hire also has read the Project 2025 manifesto and they are into executing it.
Okay, so this is like when Trump did his entire Supreme Court nominee list from the Heritage Foundation.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's like an extended version of that.
Yeah, so basically the Heritage Foundation is leading this Project 2025 thing, but it's actually like a coalition of multiple different right-wing conservative groups in the United States coming together to accomplish kind of these shared goals. But the Heritage Foundation does lead it. So the thing about Project 2025 is it's kind of like this idea that you go into class on day one and over summer everyone did the reading. So when you walk into class, you're able to start talking about the reading immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So that's this whole idea, is that you don't waste a single day. Like, the second the president hits, he staffs everybody shows up, and they're like, yeah, we already know our assignments. We already did the reading. We know our plan. We're ready to execute it now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and they're obviously thinking Donald Trump will probably be the person. And a lot of people in the media have linked this more specifically to Trump, like Trump is doing it. But what we're going to see when we talk about the Heritage Foundation is this is just another extension of business as usual for the Heritage Foundation and what they have been doing for decades with many different Republicans.
Yeah, I always imagined, like, that the Heritage Foundation doesn't fundamentally give a shit who is in the White House, so long as they're reading their stuff and paying attention to it.
Yeah, exactly. So the Heritage Foundation, in its simplest terms, it's a conservative right-wing think tank.
Yeah.
That's what it is. They do these studies about economics or whatever the social issues are that they care about. And I say do these studies very loosely. Okay, they're conservative, they're right wing. It's a lot of grifting. And then they publish these pieces on their website, or they send out these briefings to Republican politicians. And they sometimes will come up with these like campaigns or causes that they're trying to rally everyone behind. So at its most complex, though, the Heritage Foundation kind of is what conspiracy theorists on YouTube might call the deep state, at the stage before the conspiracy theory devolved just into, like, dribbling anti-Semitic messes or whatever.
So it's the Goyish deep state.
Yes. And even though a rational person, if you're hearing about this, might understand, like, the Heritage Foundation, it is a group of people we don't elect, whose names we don't know, who are not accountable to us for anything, and still somehow are running our country.
Like, they are drafting the legislation that ends up going before Congress.
Exactly.
They are picking who gets into bureaucratic positions in every department.
Exactly. Yeah. They are deciding who's in charge of, every department that you care about that's doing things that, like, the EPA, they would decide who gets staffed to be in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency, everything. So one article described the Heritage Foundation by saying, the Heritage Foundation is a marketing company, a branding agency, and a policy shop rolled into one. But above all, Heritage is a networking group. It has spent decades fashioning itself into the hub of a constellation of conservative individuals and organizations united by their opposition to government regulations, from taxes to gun control to environmental protections and socially progressive causes like same-sex marriage. So, yeah, basically this is the summary, right? They have your traditional conservative right-wing ideology, but they operate as a marketing company. They're trying to promote their causes, market this lifestyle, this conservative right-wing lifestyle on one hand, but also themselves, right?
Yeah.
As being important big shots in Washington you need to listen to. Also a branding agency. If they have politicians, they try to shape and mold them into what they think the brand of the new conservative right-wing movement should be. And a policy shop. They're literally drafting policy, writing policy, recommending policy constantly. So the history of the Heritage Foundation, they got their start in the 1970s. Do you know anything about how they started or their founders?
I only know the thing about, like, the Coors family and their, like, gay ban. Right. So this is... One of the founders was of the Coors beer family.
This is true. Yes. Joseph Coors.
And apparently at the time, Coors was doing a thing where they were like, are you now or have you ever been a member of the gay party? Like, to employees. Like, they were, like, discriminating against gay employees at their breweries.
Wait, is there actually a gay political party?
No, that was me being an asshole.
Oh, that's you being funny. Okay, because I would have loved...
I like that you have to say, that's you being funny. That tells me a lot about my sense of humor.
Or my ability to interpret humor, maybe. But I was just thinking it could be kind of fun to have a gay political party.
I mean, that would be... It would end up getting taken over by, like, advocate types.
Definitely. Or Raytheon somehow. Yeah,
no, Raytheon would be at Pride. And they would be like,
they're already there. They're already there.
These missiles have rainbow flags on them.
Yeah, exactly.
But...
Okay, so Joseph Coors, they're doing McCarthyism against gay people. They're doing homophobia,
and it led to,
hunts.
like decade-long boycott of Coors among a lot of union activists and a lot of, like, queer rights activists.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense, yeah. So yes, that was one of the founding members, Joseph Coors. So basically the Heritage Foundation, kind of the idea for it came about in spring of 1971 in the basement cafeteria of the United States Capitol building. It was officially founded, though, in 1973. So the main big-time founder guy that we're going to hear about the most is Edwin J. Fuellner Jr. And at the time, he was a Republican congressional staffer. He just turned 30, and he was working for Representative Philip Crane, who was an Illinois Republican who had just written a book called The Democrat's Dilemma: How the Liberal Left Captured the Democratic Party. So in this book, he argued that left-wing radicals inspired by the Fabian Society, which was a socialist group in Britain, were secretly trying to turn America into a socialist state via the Democratic Party. So if you are a socialist, this is funny because, you know, people on the right always call Democrats communists or socialists, and you're like,
also,
I wish.
The Fabian Society, that's, like, they're pulling one out of, like, mothballs there. Like, that's some, like, 19th century shit.
Yeah, I mean, this is a real kooky position to have in general if you know anything about socialism or the Fabian Society or the Democratic Party. So this just sounds really kooky to me. This is just a real wacky guy, Philip Crane. But Fuellner was his assistant. And it's important to note that Fuellner, when he had been, you know, an undergrad at Regis College, he had been drawn to this emerging conservative movement that saw Democrats as the enemy, for sure, but also even moderate Republicans who threatened to do to their party what they believed the Fabians had done to the Democrats.
Like, he was like, he was going to do McCarthyism, but he was going to extend it into the Republican Party. He was like, listen, we got rid of, you know, Roosevelt era New Deal Democrats.
Yes.
There are Rockefeller Republicans.
Exactly. Yes, this guy is like, you are not Republicaning hard enough. You are middle ground Republicans, and you are going to ruin our entire political party, just like the Democrats have become socialists. Did not happen. That did not happen. But yeah. So he came from this background, and then he ends up working for this guy, Philip Crane, who was like, yes, everyone is trying to secretly turn the United States to socialism. So in 1964, he ended up becoming a grad student at the Wharton School, and he organized a campus group to support the potential presidency of Barry Goldwater,
who we talked about a little bit on the Reagan episode and also on the Orange County episode,
the Orange
right?
County bonus episode. Yes.
And Goldwater was sort of like the first of the movement Republicans, in the sense that he came from a different background than the older sort of like Rockefeller big business types, where it was sort of, I mean, that was definitely there, but it was about like an ideological battle.
Right.
Right.
Right. So, and this is when we talked about in the kind of Reagan episode, like the new right that was forming.
Yeah.
All of these guys are kind of coming from the same place, thinking the same things, and you'll really start to just draw the connections if you listen to a lot of our episodes. And yeah, the bonus episode we did over on our Patreon about Orange County conservatism.
Yeah.
So in addition to Fuellner, we've also got this guy, Paul Weyrich, who was a congressional aide who later would be credited with coining the phrase moral majority.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting, right? Mm-hmm. And in 1971, he was just 28 years old, hanging out with his buddy Fuellner, who was 30, and the basement cafeteria of the United States Capitol. So to get a sense of who this guy Weyrich is, later in life, he had this quote that everyone was just kind of like, that really sums this guy up. He said, "I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down."
So there's that like weird like Nixon thing where he's like, oh, like the thing we're gonna do is we're gonna like target like anything left with like you're like a hippie weirdo and depoliticize everyone.
Yes.
That's like the basic idea. Like, let's get as few people.
Yeah, let's get as few people voting as possible. I mean, obviously, this has always been a conservative right-wing thing, right? Because voter disenfranchisement, the people who are going to vote are the rich white guys with power.
Yeah.
And this is why I always say I don't think you can vote your way out of capitalism, but there's that saying, if voting changed anything, they wouldn't let us do it. And I'm like, well, there are some people who work really hard to try to make sure certain types of people can't do it. So I don't think voting will ever get us out of capitalism, but I think maybe it can change a little.
I think,
sometimes.
Oh gosh, what? Uh, Soto Martinez, like both of our city council person.
Yeah.
Kind of rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for local elections. You can get some real interesting people in there representing you. So then the third person, like David mentioned, was Joseph Coors.
Yeah.
Who is, the Colorado beer guy. And I've got a fun fact about him, which I'm not sure if we talked about in any of our other episodes, but a Reagan White House aide and future NRA president, Oliver North, once asked Joseph Coors to wire $65,000 to a Swiss bank account to buy a cargo plane for Nicaraguan rebels you might know as the Contras. So, all of these guys are just dealing with each other all the time in hilarious ways.
I really hope that listeners are looking up a picture of Oliver North.
Oh, yeah, you delight in Oliver North's appearance.
Well, no, because it is what, your Republican dad thinks a real band should look like.
Yeah, I'm looking him up right now, actually. I'm guessing the 70s.
Yeah, look up young Oliver North.
Young Oliver North.
There we go. This
to me is not what anybody thinks is peak masculinity.
But he looks like the kind of guy who is going to, petulantly hector you over politics in line at a Starbucks.
Potentially. He also kind of looks like the guy who was in the 40-Year-Old Virgin as the Steve Carell. Does this man not look like Steve Carell to you?
You have a second career as a casting director. I'd never seen that before.
But do you see it?
Yeah.
Because people tell me I have no facial recognition, but I'm looking at Steve Carell.
I feel, you know what, Jim from The Office, if he went...
Okay. All right, okay.
Yeah.
So that's just a fun kind of fact about what kind of guy Joseph Coors was. He was like, all right, Oliver North, I'll help you bribe the Contras by buying them a cargo plane.
Help them out. I don't even know if that was a bribe. That was
more... It might
more...
just been a gift.
They were given a lot of gifts.
So the foundational story for how this all started, though, is that over, breakfast at the Capitol, Fuellner and Weyrich start talking. So the New York Times kind of documented how this started, and they said the two commiserated over a recent study from the American Enterprise Institute, which is a conservative think tank that at the time was already pretty established. And this was all about a proposed supersonic transport plane. And the thinking was that this report could have helped buttress their argument that the government should continue to fund the plane as part of an effort to win the Cold War. But it had been withheld by, American Enterprise Institute until after the Senate voted on the issue, so they didn't bias the debate. And they were like, well, that's the wrong approach. You should be trying to bias the debate.
Okay,
why aren't you trying to convince people?
Basically, the American Enterprise Institute, this other think tank, was like, what would do anti-communism really well? Spending potentially billions of dollars.
On this one airplane.
On this dumb airplane.
But we don't want to sway the results of Congress because we have integrity, so we're not going to publish our thoughts until after the vote already happens. So, Fuellner and Weyrich are like, that's dumb. What's the point of having a think tank if you're not going to try to influence people to do what you want?
I mean, to be fair, they're right.
I mean, they were right. And that's the thing. It's like sometimes people are really good at playing this game.
Yeah.
And they are right. So they're thinking and they're like, well, what if we could start a new think tank? One that actually actively sought to influence politics. And in that process, we could advance the cause of this new type of conservatism. Mm-hmm. Remember the Barry Goldwater kind
of
conservatism.
The movement conservatism.
Yes. Advance the cause of movement conservatism. Exactly. So they wanted to take this idea that was kind of counter-establishment at the time and turn it into the mainstream Republican conservatism.
Yeah, I mean, there is, the Goldwater thing, when you read people talking about it from the 60s and 70s, or, movement conservative types, they do see themselves in a way that I think, the, Claremont Institute people kind of see themselves as today, as being sort of countercultural.
They really did, yeah. And, yeah, do you want to explain what the movement conservatism thing is?
Oh, so, right, the traditional Republican Party had been, big business centered in, the industrial core of the Northeast, right? So, Nelson Rockefeller people, who had a lot of connections to sort of like national and international capital and finance, and were pretty stuck in their ways, and tended to be like, I'm not going to say they were socially like liberal or libertarian or whatever, but they were like, that's not really
They didn't really care.
That's not really our game.
Yeah.
And so like movement conservatism was something that came out of like an incipient suburban middle and upper middle class of the South and Southwest that tended to emphasize issues like racial segregation, traditional family values, a reaction against women's liberation stuff. It tended to be a lot of people who saw the world going to hell in a handbasket. Right.
It was a more socially motivated branch of Republicanism rather than financially motivated. It was still financially motivated, but...
I mean, right, but it tended to awkwardly often tie that, like, the sort of, like, libertarian, like, Chicago school type ideology to social conservatism.
Right. And the thing I always think is really interesting about that is it's like, the social causes, that's how the politicians convince us to vote for their business plans.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you do my business thing and I'll give you whatever social cause you care about.
Yeah, which is, you know, like, ideologically you can see the contradiction because
right.
one is, like, extraordinarily libertarian and the other is very, like, authoritarian.
Yeah. So this is kind of what's going on that these guys are into. They're like, we're into this. This is kind of new at the time. And we want to make this the mainstream guiding focus of the Republican Party. So they're like, we need a money guy.
Yeah.
So who do they go to? The same guy Oliver North went to.
They go to Joseph Coors.
They go to Joseph Coors. And they had heard around town he was looking to invest in a politically conservative organization of some kind. And they're like, have we got the organization for you? So they have this meeting with Coors, and it's held in the office of a former Nixon aide, which is just random. And Coors is like, I like it. I'm going to give you a little over $250,000. All right, so this is 1973.
So $250,000 is not chump change.
It's not chump change. And with that, in the year 1973, the Heritage Foundation was officially born. So the Heritage Foundation really was guided a lot by Fuellner.
Okay.
You know, it was guided also by Weirich's principles, but Fuellner really becomes like the guy. And he's got these 5 guiding principles for the Heritage Foundation. And unfortunately, we're going to have a few kind of lists happen in this episode. The Heritage Foundation's really into like 4 pillars, like 4 causes.
No, I
5
get like right
principles.
They are any sort of thing like this is operating on the BuzzFeed model of like a listicle.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. But if you remember what they wanted to say, they wanted to influence politicians while also just like advancing the cause of conservatism with everyday people. So this is actually a pretty effective format for that BuzzFeedification of right-wing conservative politics. So the 5 guiding principles that Fuellner had were, number 1, free enterprise. Free business, open hand, free markets.
Let's get rid of the minimum wage.
Yeah,
let's get rid of the 40-hour work week.
Right, just free enterprise, baby. Yeah. Capitalism's going to solve it all. Okay, number 2, limited government. Small government.
Same thing.
Is wild because these conservative guys actually do want big government.
Just in like military shit.
Military shit and telling you what to do with your body. They love that. That's what they want the government involved in, and they don't want the government involved in anything else. Okay, the third, ironically, personal liberty, because we know they still want the government to make you not able to do things with your body that you want to do. Whatever. They say it's personal liberty, though, like your personal freedom. That's like a buzz term, I guess. The fourth is traditional values.
I think that's how you square that circle, right? Because you're like, well, but like the personal liberty is for like certain kinds of people,
right?
Yes. Who are like traditional like dude guys.
Yeah, you have the freedom to not have to look at the ugly weirdos that you don't like or understand. You're so free to not have to be around gay people, women, disabled people, people of color, anybody. You're like, not my America. My America is just a bunch of rich guys and hot chicks with big boobs.
Who don't talk.
Who don't talk. They're like, you have the freedom to live in that America. Yes. That's kind of like how we interpret freedom, which is wild. And then also, strong national defense. That's the fifth one. Just to get that military up in there everywhere. So these were Fielner's 5 guiding principles. And he was like, I want to make sure, though, the Heritage Foundation does not just look like some tool that rich Republicans are using. I want it to appeal to average, everyday people. And that was kind of, in his head, what necessitated this anti-establishment identity. They weren't going to be just like a mouthpiece of the Republican Party or these politicians. They were going to challenge them sometimes, and they were going to push them on issues that were important to everyday American conservatives. So Fielner ended up soliciting the help of this guy named Richard Vigueri. Do you know who this guy is?
No.
I've never heard of this man before. But he apparently was a conservative marketing pioneer who was known for having this like high-quality mailing list. This was really.
I'm giving you a look. What the
know.
fuck is a high-quality mailing list?
Basically, back in the days before the internet, if you wanted to reach out to people, you wanted to have a list of people who you knew if you mailed them information or a donation card, they'd be very likely to respond. They had money. They wanted to give it to you if you supported their causes, and he had kind of curated this list of potential.
He was an influencer. What you're saying is he was
an influencer.
The you of the 70s conservative movement.
Oh, don't say that.
Okay.
So he ended up also getting really known for basically like fear mongering. See, this isn't me. I do the opposite of fear mongering. So he was basically like, oh my God, the country's about to collapse all the time. You're probably gonna die. You have to give your money to this cause.
No,
this was the approach.
It's. I mean, like you can see that. Like the stereotype is the guy who's like building the bomb shelter.
Yes.
Right, where it's like there are not communists in the bushes.
No.
There are, which when we talked about the Orange County thing, where it was like the person working for the ACLU who got ran out of town.
Yeah.
Like, whereas
that was
like,
an interesting bonus episode.
It's actually just a guy who's like, I would like to teach like evolution in schools. It's not
that extreme, right?
Yeah.
But this guy, Vigueri, he had a good high quality mailing list, and he was really good at fear mongering to get people to join his cause. And Fielner was like, we need this guy. So he got him on board, and they started to build together for the Heritage Foundation a high quality mailing list of their own. So the goal from the jump is that Fielner was like, this has to be results oriented. We're not doing this for information, for knowledge, for love of the game. No, we are trying to get results. We want to have specific goals that we are going after, and we want to take specific steps that it's going to result in these things getting actually implemented, all of our ideas. So this was his main thing. And he's like, my strategy is going to be like Procter & Gamble's approach to Crest toothpaste. And here's his quote. They sell it and resell it every day by keeping the product fresh in the consumer's mind. So he's like, we want to influence politicians. Politicians are our clients or our customers, and we're trying to sell them toothpaste, and we got to be fresh in their head every day. So he's like, the Heritage Foundation has to be everywhere in Washington.
So he's doing but he's Angelining it up. He's
Angelining, and for those of you unfortunate enough to not be from Los Angeles, we have a celebrity here named Angeline, and she famously just had billboards of herself all around town. I haven't seen any in a few years, but she's got big blonde hair, and she drives a pink Corvette, and she'll park her Corvette on the side of the road in random places around LA, and you can pay money to take a picture with her, and she'll sign something for you, and she has these billboards. So basically, yes, that is what Fielner wants to do with the Heritage Foundation.
By the way, our friend who you met the other night has her tattoo studio in the same place that Angeline has her offices.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
One of our friends, Lizzie, has done projects with Angeline.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Lizzie has also been on some podcast episodes and bonus content for those of you listening at home. So, Fielner is like, we need to do a couple things to be everywhere all at once. We need to get as many Heritage Foundation people on staff in Congress as possible. Like, obviously, they're not at the point where they're probably going to have, like, their own senators or representatives, but they can have their assistants be Heritage Foundation people.
And it's one of those things where it's sort of like, they become influential just by being in the room constantly. And
you've got a lot of them in the room, potentially. So they're small fish, but a lot of small fish. They're everywhere. And then he's also like, we're going to lean really, really hard into networking. So Heritage Foundation from the jump was doing things like hosting weekend retreats for lawmakers or hosting study groups for young congressional staffers. semester-long internships for college students, and they would even offer their own heritage housing.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like trying to get these people when they were young, when
Wait,
nobody
what
else
was a heritage house?
It's just like dormitory style living for these interns.
Okay, so they're getting like young people there as like little foot soldiers.
They're the little foot soldiers, but also these young people are going to grow up and they're going to get more relevance and they're going to be more, in the scene in Washington. And Heritage Foundation got to them young.
Yeah.
When everybody else was like, you're nobody, you're worthless, we're not paying attention to you, Heritage Foundation was like, come over here. We're building an army. Yeah, we're building an army.
This is the thing that when we were talking about the John Birch Society in another episode, where it's like, they thought, like, they were like, this Marxist-Leninism, really good principles. We should do conservative Marxist-Leninism.
Yeah. No, it's totally true. They do take a lot of this, like, they do centralize. They do tend to centralize things when they're trying to be efficient. They really do. It's very interesting. So the same year that all this is going on, the Republican Study Committee was also founded. And this was a conservative caucus in the House of Representatives. And Fuellner helped establish this too. He helped form this too. So he's just kind of all over. He's like, I am the puppet master. You are my puppets. Dance, dance, dance. So in 2013, The Atlantic wrote an article about the Heritage Foundation. And they said, Heritage sponsors the RSCs, that's the Republican Study Committee's, annual retreat, paying for members and their spouses to spend 3 days at a lavish hotel proximate to D.C. And House Republicans who belong to the RSC meet every Wednesday over lunch to talk policy, plot legislative strategy, and seek out co-sponsors for legislation. Each member of Congress may bring only one staffer to the large conference room in the basement of the Capitol where the meetings are held. Outside groups are barred, except Heritage. The Foundation's lobbyists are a fixture at the meetings, which Heritage has historically catered with sandwiches from Chick-fil-A.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. There's so much in here. It's just so... First of all, the Chick-fil-A thing. Of course it's Chick-fil-A. It's the homophobic sandwiches.
Yeah, that's... they're not open on Sunday.
They're not open on Sunday, and they hate gay people. It's like, if Heritage Foundation ran its own fast food, it would be Chick-fil-A.
Okay, I'm just going to say, for people who get all up in arms about the Chick-fil-A sauce, it's Thousand Island dressing. I'm sorry, it's just Thousand Island dressing.
I've never been to a Chick-fil-A.
I lived in Eastern Idaho, Madeline.
Okay.
There's nothing remarkable about the Chick-fil-A.
It's just Thousand Island.
It's Thousand Island dressing.
Well, if you, were in the Republican Study Committee for the House of Representatives, you'd be eating that sweet, sweet Thousand Island Chick-fil-A homophobic no Sunday sandwich.
And this is, I'm assuming, like, not in the 70s. This is the 80s or 90s.
Well, no, this is 2013 when Atlantic was talking about that. But this goes back to 1973 or whatever when it was founded. Like, the reason why Heritage Foundation is the only lobbyist allowed in the room in current times for the Republican Study Committee, this caucus, is that Fuellner founded both of them, and he founded them intentionally to work together.
So, they're just, like, the best caterers, and they're, like...
I mean, yeah, but he's like, okay, we have our think tank, our influencing, right? And then here's the people we are targeting to be influenced by us, the Republican Study Committee. So these are the actual legislators that we have access to try to feed our ideas the most. And they're the only people in the room kind of plotting legislative strategy with these representatives and figuring out co-sponsors, talking policy. It's them.
And
basically they have their own caucus, more or less.
I can imagine if you're like a particularly noxious brand of 19-20-year-old, or 22-year-old. You're just out of college.
Yeah.
Right, and you're like, wow, what path will lead me to power? Right, like, how will I actually have influence? The Heritage Foundation is looking really good because they're the only ones who get access to the room.
Right, and they're paying attention to you. They're targeting young people to bring into the fold. So some of the early efforts that the Heritage Foundation was taking on when they also established the Republican Study Committee, they had some specific policies they were trying to target. Remember, they want to be results-oriented. So they're like, okay, we're going to try to make Social Security voluntary instead of mandatory from your paychecks.
I mean, that means they're trying to destroy Social Security.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
The second is they're trying to say that if you are a worker on strike, you don't get access to food stamps because you're not working by your own voluntary kind of sense of self. So why should we pay for that? And they were trying to warn parents about the danger posed by the advancement of secular humanism in public schools. So basically they were trying to fearmonger about removing God from schools or something like that.
This is I told you about the thing where the John Birch Society was like trying to take people back to an 1870s curriculum.
Yeah.
This is that, right?
This is that. Yeah. This is real that. So remember in 1973 when they first started, they just had the Joseph Coors money. It was $260,000. That was their budget.
Mm-hmm.
By 1975, the Heritage Foundation's annual budget had gone up threefold, basically, to $743,000.
Damn, they're almost millionaires.
Yeah, really, really fast, just
Yeah.
within a couple years. So in 1977, they ended up having this guy, Philip Truelock, come into the Heritage Foundation to establish a whole research department.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're doing research of their own, and they're really starting to kind of craft these papers to influence policy. By 1979, their budget had increased to $4.1 million per year.
Jesus.
Yes, and
Yeah.
this is in less than a decade. Remember, they started in 1973 with the $260,000. By 1979, what is that? 6 years later, it's $4.1 million, and they spent $600,000 to buy a new building on Capitol Hill.
So they're, I mean,
They're entrenched fast. This is
I'm
working.
gonna say they're not like they were the real deep state when they were in the basement.
Yeah.
Now they're the neighbor state.
They kind of are the neighbor state. That's true. Yeah. So this gets us to the 1980s. And obviously, what happens with Republicans in the 1980s?
Reagan.
Reagan, yeah. So the 1980 presidential election is coming along. And Heritage Foundation, by 1980, has a $5 million annual budget. Just keeps going up. And they're like, we got some money to play with. And they are backed by a lot of business guys at this point. There's this like article that came out in 1980 about it, and in this article in 1980 they said Heritage's biggest contributor is the Skyfe Family Trust, and the second is Coors, who still gave around $300,000 every single year, which was 6% of the Heritage budget. But back in the day, remember, Coors was like 90% of the money going into that place. Other big donors included the Noble Foundation, which was established with an income from Oklahoma oil and gas fortune, the John M. Olin Fund, whose president was former Treasury Secretary William Simon and was on the Heritage's board. So Heritage in total at this time was getting money from 87 corporations that were on the Fortune 500. But Fuellner was like, from the standpoint of the business community, there's no reason why it shouldn't be 487. Like, why just 87? Give me 487 of the Fortune 500. He says Heritage is pro-business, anti-government. Like, what's up? We're here for you businesses. Come give us your money. We're fighting for you. So he also said there are exceptions to consistent alignment with corporate interests, though. Like Heritage's massive 3,000-page set of recommendations to the incoming administration, which we'll get into in a second, included a call for the elimination of federal subsidies for synthetic fuel development, in spite of the fact that it was a major recipient of subsidies was the Fluor Corporation, whose president sat on the Heritage's board and gave Heritage like $50,000 a year. So I think what they're trying to do is like appear kind of independent still, so they have credibility with like the average conservative, but also can still kind of pull their weight around Washington.
I mean, you know my thing, where it's sort of like pragmatism always wins the day.
Yeah.
Right? Like, where it's like whatever ideological thing you're doing is like less important than where the money is.
Right.
Right. But
that's
there
your
are
realpolitik.
Well, I just like I just think that's how politics works. But there are always some like ideological hardliners who are like, actually, government subsidies is big government. Fuck that.
Yeah.
And so they will put out the paper being like, no government subsidies. They don't understand the realpolitik thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So also this article said, besides corporate and fat cat contributions, Heritage gets small donations of $2 to $20 from 120,000 people by direct mail. Remember how they got the direct mail guy?
Can you imagine being like, you're in like Orange County, you're Anaheim, wherever.
Yeah, that sounds right. Huntington Beach, yeah.
You're like a suburban housewife, and you're mailing $2 to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, but this was working, and this is why he targeted that guy who had the good mailing list. And Fjellner said, for the first time, you have a broadly supported think tank. We're not just Joe Coor's mouthpiece in Washington.
Yeah.
So he was really trying to, be relevant with everyday people. So 1980 presidential election. Heritage decides to do what it calls the big gamble back in this era and back Ronald Reagan's presidential campaign. So when Fjellner was talking about Reagan, he said, we had met him when he was a governor in California. We had visited his ranch and seen copies of Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek with marginal notes in the book. So we knew that he was one of us. So remember we did, obviously, the episode about Milton Friedman, just like the cult of free market capitalism.
And we did the Reagan episode, which I think mentioned some Hayek.
Yeah, totally. So this is really, the Heritage Foundation just slides neatly into all of this stuff we've been talking about. Fjellner shows up, meets Reagan, is like, you're a Friedman guy, all right, we're doing free market capitalism, like, open it all up, like, we got this pro-business, let's go. So, during the 1980 election, the Heritage Foundation, even though they were operating with a bigger budget now, $5 million a year, they were still kind of up and coming. They decided to examine the federal government from top to bottom and produce a detailed, comprehensive overhaul kind of conservative policy vision that had practical, directions for implementation. And this is pretty wild. They basically decided to write their dream government broken down by individual roles and individual departments.
This is, so they're like, we're going to do Chile.
Basically,
but we're going to do it in the United States.
Yeah, so if you listen to our episode about Milton Friedman, he got to do his master plan for Chile. But a lot of these free market capitalist guys, they're restricted in the United States. They can't actually do full free market capitalism because it violates the Constitution.
Yeah.
So they have to come up with a different way to implement a lot of their ideas here in the United States. Because you have to remember, this super free market capitalism thing, it's actually a really fringe right-wing ideology. But it's so normalized here.
I mean, it's one of those, even getting aside from, ideological ways it might violate the Constitution, it's like the fucking Commerce Clause in the Constitution. Right?
Yes. No, literally, there are reasons we can't do that here. So they're like, we're going to come up with what our conservative policy vision is for the United States that we can implement. And as you might imagine, this is over 1,000 pages long. It is massive.
It is the David Foster Wallace Infinite Jest of the conservative movement.
It really is. And they called it Mandate for Leadership. And this thing alone cost $250,000 to compile. There were 20 volumes. It included 2,000 different proposals. Some of them included tax cuts, obviously, creating these enterprise zones in cities, basically to facilitate gentrification, giving the president a line item veto of whatever he wants, investing in a new Air Force bomber.
I love how their limited government thing is let's empower the executive.
Yeah, we'll empower this one guy to do anything he wants, and that's going to come up later when we talk about Project 2025. So that's relevant. Also, throughout the 80s, Heritage also was arguing in favor of increased immigration as a free market-based boost to the economy. So basically, they're like, wait, why are you so mad at the immigrants? We can use them like slaves.
I mean, this is one... Okay. Allow me to rant for a moment.
I love it. I'll encourage you to rant for a moment.
The ways in which immigrants are talked about in the United States by both, let's call them liberals.
Yes, they are.
Right?
Yeah.
And these idiots, right-wing liberals, is always extraordinarily psychotic because, the fundamental assumption everyone has is this is an exploitable population, and how can we keep them exploitable by not giving them rights?
Yeah, no,
right?
totally.
So when, liberals are immigration is good, they say things like, do you know how much, illegal immigrants pay into Social Security?
Right. Or do you know how hard it is to pick strawberries in the field all day? We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you do hear these types of ideas
Sorry.
come about. No, it's true.
Yeah.
So they actually, I will say, to me, it is evil, but it is ideologically consistent with what right-wing politics should be. And it is shocking that actually Republicans aren't touting this now. That they're like, actually, the immigrant is the scary thing you should be afraid of. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually almost an anti-business stance, because you would think that they would be like how the Heritage Foundation was in the 80s, just like, yeah, fucking send them over, we'll pay them 25 cents, let's see what they'll do.
Okay, so I actually think it's like internally consistent in the sense that, like, you know, a really good way to make a population marginalized, make them undocumented and quote unquote illegal.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I guess it is, yeah.
Like,
and then you can pay them 25 cents.
And if they have a complaint, you report them to INS, you report them to ICE.
No, that's actually a really good point. These are two consistent ideologies. So the Atlantic, when looking back on this first document that the Heritage Foundation came out with, Mandate for Leadership, they were like, this thing just had a mind-boggling level of detail. So the Heritage Foundation ended up having to come out with a condensed version, which still had more than 1,000 pages, and it became a paperback bestseller in Washington. And they ended up aggressively marketing the Mandate for Leadership to members of Reagan's transition team. And we're going to hear the phrase transition team a lot, so just explain. It's basically when a new president comes in, they have to transition the government, right, from the hands of the old president and their staffers.
They have to transition, like, who flies the helicopters in, like, Iran over a hostage crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got to do, like, a baton pass kind of thing. So there's these transitional teams that they're like, we're not in these positions, but we're going to help appoint the people who will be in these positions to take over this stuff. And there's just this. So we're going to hear transition team a lot because it ends up being really essential to the Heritage Foundation's strategy. So in particular, this guy who was on Reagan's transition team was a dude named Edwin Meese, and he was Reagan's chief of staff in California and later became his attorney general in Washington. And the Heritage Foundation was like, Meese is our guy. He's our in. We just really got to get this book in Meese's hands. I mean, book. They did make a book about it, yeah. But, this doctorate.
It's like this is like multiple volumes, 1,000-page. 20
volumes, yeah. Right. So they end up getting it to Meese, and next thing you know, newly elected Ronald Reagan is passing out copies of Mandate for Leadership at his first cabinet meeting. And this actually became his administration's entire blueprint. So we're going to talk about this later, but just like harkening back to the Project 2025 thing, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning of this episode, is the current campaign that the Heritage Foundation is running. The thing they say is they call it the mandate. They're like, here's our mandate. It is basically just the 2025 version of the Mandate for Leadership.
Which is no government but the defense industry.
Yes. Gay people are going to kill you and discriminate against everybody. That's totally cool, man. And we love oil drilling. Our whole politics is oil. Just let us do oil.
Yeah.
So that's really, it's the same kind of thing that was happening in Mandate for Leadership in 1980, which isn't super reassuring because you're like, Reagan was the worst. This was what Reagan was using. But what we're going to see is that they actually come out with a lot of different editions of Mandate for Leadership. And the Project 2025 one is just the newest version of the same old, which I don't say to be like, so it's totally fine. It's not a problem. It's kind of like these guys have always been a problem, and all the shit that you extra don't like about the Republican Party is probably these guys.
I mean, it also kind of sounds like they like had one real burst of creative energy, and they were like, you know what? We're just going to do a new preface.
Yeah. Well, we get into that. Some people start to critique them in the 90s. They're like, oh, did you guys run out of ideas? Oh, you're still doing the same ideas? So Reagan was so taken with this plan, this Mandate for Leadership. He was like, yes, and I want you guys to help me execute it. So he goes to the Heritage Foundation and is like, will you help me organize my team and staff my team? And this is where the staffing element, finding the right people, because remember, the Heritage Foundation had been cultivating these relationships with these young staffers. Now all of a sudden they got a president who's like, whoever will be my staff. And they're like, we have these guys who we've been working with now for 7 years.
Also, remember, famously, as you discussed in the Reagan episode, Reagan, kind of a dumb bunny.
Yeah, just point him somewhere, and he's like, okay.
Oh, okay. I guess that's what I'm doing for the next decade.
And again, does not absolve him of accountability, but it is really shocking to see just how easily manipulated this man was by everybody around him. So, Meese wrote a letter on White House stationery, no less, saying that members of Heritage's President's Club, who were at the time donors to the Heritage Foundation, who had donated $1,000 or more, would, quote, provide a vital communications link between policymakers and those key people who made possible Reagan's victory. So this was something that was being reported as early as 1986 by Sidney Blumenthal in the book The Rise of the Counter-Establishment. So what we're seeing is the Heritage Foundation and the White House right away in 1980, very, very closely linked. Very, very buddy-buddy. Like, Reagan's their guy.
Yeah.
Reagan's like the you know, they're running the country through Reagan, basically.
And, you know, Nancy's doing the decorating. I'm assuming that they have some, like, Heritage Foundation staffer being like, no.
Probably, honestly.
Don't pay attention to your gay friend from the 70s.
Yeah, don't pay attention to him, Nancy. Be normal. Be a normal president woman. Yeah, so this was just really, really fascinating. And again, you know, not to be like, ooh, the conspiracy, the deep state, but this is the kind of group you think about when you're like, there's just like this random group of people who aren't elected who actually are running things, and we never get to vote for them.
I actually think, right, like, instead of thinking about it in terms of conspiracy, because this is all out in the open, right? Like, there's not, it's
not deceptive.
It would be, what's that, like, weird summer camp that all the conservatives go to? In any case.
What?
I'll look it up and I'll...
The one in the woods?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But, right, like, it's not, like, it would be nice if it were, like, fancy robes and, like, satanic rituals or whatever.
Bohemian Grove.
There we go.
Bohemian Grove, yeah.
What it is actually is, like, a bunch of, like, banal, earnestly annoying 22-year-olds.
Yeah.
Which is...
Yeah, play acting at a secret society sometimes.
I don't even think they're it's like they're wearing Brooks Brothers.
Yeah. No, they are. But the thing that's interesting is by the end of Reagan's first year in office, 60% of the mandate's ideas were being implemented.
Sick.
Like, so these guys are effective. Remember when Fuellner was like, we have to be able to, like, actually implement changes? They're doing it. it. Still, though, the Heritage Foundation had its concerns. Like, on the first anniversary of the Reagan presidency, they issued this report characterizing his tenure as a president up to this day, and they were like, honestly, he's been kind of a disappointment to conservatives. Like, he could be more conservative. And the Heritage laid a lot of the blame on personnel, who they were like, you're not really committed enough to the president's agenda, aka our agenda, aka the mandate. So they really started to kind of do this kind of bullying pressure thing where they would come out with these reports and, like, grades basically for key politicians around Washington. So the president, they would, like, issue basically a report card, a grade for how well he was doing as a conservative.
And I'm assuming he got a lot of C minuses.
Right, they're like, you could do better.
But that's
you could be conservative more.
This
Reagan.
is also, I mean, like, this is like abusive romantic partner behavior.
Yeah,
like,
they're like negging Reagan.
Listen, you did really well, but I'm just saying, like, next time.
Right. They're like, I don't know, Reagan. Are you really into this? I don't know if you're really into this. Yeah, it's super manipulative behavior. And we'll see they don't just do this with the president. They do this with, like, basically any Republican in Congress. So they're doing this starting out to everybody. So remember, though, their chief complaint of Reagan was they were like, your staff's not great.
It's only 60% us.
Right. So basically, staffing does become this huge focus of the Heritage Foundation because they know they can get their guys in the room, they can get more done. So in 1981, a Democrat named Daniel Patrick Moynihan said something that kind of encapsulated the impact that the Heritage Foundation was having on the Republican Party. And he said, all of a sudden, the GOP has become a party of ideas. And this ended up solidifying the Heritage Foundation's role in what The Atlantic called a quasi-official arm of GOP administrations and Congresses, a sponsor of scholarship and supplier of legislation, a policy base for the party when out of power. So by this point, by 1981, the Heritage Foundation is an institution. In 1984, they come out with Mandate 2. They update it. So
this is right around the time that the new presidential, like, Reagan's second term presidential election is...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
What, it's Dukakis he's running against?
Oh my God, I don't even remember that, but probably, yeah, Dukakis. Yeah. So they come out with Mandate 2. Reagan wins, and he's in there still implementing Heritage Foundation ideas. By 1986, we actually see the CIA is starting to have regular meetings with the Heritage Foundation. And we've talked about this in other episodes. The CIA really starts trying to, like, curry their favor. They're like, do they like us? Do they like us? Heritage Foundation, do you like us? Are we doing all right? So they're, like, kind of wining and dining them, taking out to dinner, like, because they're starting to see the Heritage Foundation has a lot of sway in especially financing for these departments.
I mean, one of the funny things, if you, like, think about, like, the history of the CIA, this is really, like, Gen Xers asking for, like, millennials' approval.
It
right,
totally
in this sense.
is. They're like, the new cool Heritage Foundation. Like, are we cool? Do you like us? Are we good?
Because it's like, right, the CIA was basically, like, drunk business guys of, like, the 50s, where it was like, we, like, are doing international capital. We're going to, like, deregulate everything. And then, like, the new game in town is, like...
The Heritage Foundation. So, you know, they start kind of having this interesting relationship develop. And then by 1988, the Heritage Foundation publishes another mandate, Mandate 3. So they're cranking these
for
things
the
out.
midterms, I'm assuming. That's, like, these are, like...
They're strategic.
Yeah.
So 1989, Reagan's second term comes to an end. Meese, remember his advisor, ends up that they had really, really targeted the Heritage Foundation. He ended up joining Heritage as its first Ronald Reagan Fellow in Public Policy with an annual salary of more than $400,000 a year.
So
in 1989.
That feels...
So
he sounds like a sucker, honestly, because I'm just saying most of those people, other than Ollie North, who famously kind of went to jail a little bit.
Right, yeah.
Like, ended up working for, like, banks, making...
Well, I don't know. $400,000 a year, though, is still a pretty good salary back in 1989. And literally it seems like all he had to do was hand a book to Ronald Reagan and say, I like this book. So $400K a year to hand a book to somebody and say, I like this?
I want to know what his speaking fee is.
Yeah. I mean, it's like very, very fascinating, though. And we've talked before about what they call the revolving door in Congress. And the way, we've said this before, too, these companies are able to literally write legislation that benefits them. And they'll do it sometimes through groups like the Heritage Foundation. Like we talked about all the businesses that were giving money to the Heritage Foundation. And then the Heritage Foundation looks out for their interests and then maybe tells the Congress people, write this law like this, you're our Congress guys, you know, in the basement of the Capitol building catered by Chick-fil-A. They're like, here's all the laws that we're doing, with Congress guys.
Dumbest Thousand Island dressing.
Exactly. All over their stupid, weird Heritage Foundation faces. So this is kind of how it works. And then in exchange for getting them in the room, the Congress people afterwards will know that they have a job at these places, either with these companies that have been like, hey, we want you to write this law that benefits us, or with think tanks like the Heritage Foundation. And we call this the revolving door. So what you see is that nobody in Congress is ever free from influence, because even if they can't get paid by these companies while they're in Congress, you will see the majority of Congress people, when they exit their term, they end up getting employed by these companies who had contributed to their campaign financing earlier.
Yeah, so... Right, like, it's, I keep thinking about the Kissinger thing. I can't remember how many times I've said this, but it's like the thing that Kissinger, like, there are just a few influential people, and that's all that really matters.
Yes,
right?
Totally.
Where it's just, like, the Heritage Foundation kind of, like, zeroed in on the fact that it's like, look, the electability thing, it is what it is, whatever. Like, but, like, the real thing is who finances them, and who are they talking to.
Right, and they're like, we want to be those people. So... by the 90s, 1996, Mandate 4 comes out. They're coming out with these things pretty regularly. Also, around this time, the Heritage Foundation, their relationship with the CIA has been going pretty well. Remember, the CIA is like us. So they end up stepping up publicly to defend increased spending for the National Endowment for Democracy. Which, if you guys haven't listened, Ned, we did a 2-part episode about it. I think it's one of our more interesting episodes, but it's basically the CIA got caught doing a lot of shady stuff, if you haven't listened to that episode. So they petitioned the government to let them form their own NGO non-governmental organization, even though it's still funded fully by the government, to do CIA things in
It
secret.
seems like Ned basically took over the role of what, like, in old-time spy talk used to be called black propaganda.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
100%. And so they spread propaganda, and then they also try to incite color revolutions, fake revolutions in other countries to encourage regime change in favor of putting leaders in power who are more sympathetic to American business interests. So Heritage wrote, Western-style democratic movements are the least likely to threaten American interests. And this is major. So basically what they're saying is, look, it is good for business if we make the rest of the world as Americanized as possible. So the more we can do to throw money at people like National Endowment for Democracy, who are going out there paying people in other countries to stage fake revolutions that put in power people who are super sympathetic to the United States, that's the best use of money we could possibly have.
It's another way of saying that we should do neo-colonialism.
Yes, that is another way of saying that.
I think...
Yeah. No, it totally is. So this is where we really see the relationship between, like, foreign intelligence and the Heritage Foundation getting solidified. They have a common goal, and the common goal is the advancement of American business interests.
I think it's... I don't know. As I'm listening to you talk, I think one of the interesting things to think about is, like, with, you know, when we were talking about Milton Friedman, one of the things was, like, oh, this comes back to America. Like, Chile or whatever is, like, the laboratory, but it comes back to America. And the Heritage Foundation was like, we're not capitalizing hard enough here.
Yes.
Right. And so it's sort of like the America that they're trying to export is also already a fantasy.
Right, exactly.
Right.
It's true. We're like, Chile, be like more like the United States. And you're like, we're actually not even like this. And remember when people in Chile were looking at Milton Friedman and they're like, you don't even do these policies. Why do you want, you're making us do these policies? You guys don't even do that.
And like, so the Heritage Foundation, to their credit, is like, let's be ideologically consistent.
Yeah, they're like, no, we want to do it. We want to ruin our country too, please. We ruined all these countries around the globe. When's our turn to ruin our own country? Please. Mm-hmm. So, 1996, Mandate 4 comes out. That's what we talked about. It's important to know, if you've been listening to these dates, it's around every 4 years, right?
And it's I mean, this is what, Dan Quayle is...
oh my gosh, you remember Dan Quayle.
Is he the one who he like cheated on his wife while she had cancer? No.
I mean, I think that statistically most men do that. I've heard that if you're a woman with a man partner and you get cancer, part of the counseling process is that they sit you down privately and they inform you that your husband will probably
I don't think... I actually... Okay, so there's one... I don't think it's Dan Quayle. I think it's
Ross Perot. Do you remember Ross Perot?
No, it's...
yeah.
It's not Ross Perot. He was the ears.
He was the ears, yes. So... Remember, so we had, 1988, and then we had 1996. It's not perfect, but they do tend to correlate with kind of upcoming presidential elections.
Or midterms.
And they're pretty consistent every 4 to 6 years they're coming out. Mm-hmm. By the early 2000s, we're keeping this up. We've got the year 2000, Mandate 5 comes out. The year 2005, Mandate 6 comes out. And Mandate 6 in 2005 kind of marks a shift. The National Review, for example, was like, this no longer, quote, bore an uncanny resemblance to a telephone book. So something shifted in 2005.
Also, the
National Review.
Bill Kristol.
We also talked about the National Review in our Reagan episode. Didn't we?
I think so. Also possibly in the Orange County one.
Yeah, we're really weaving, if you've been listening to this episode, I think we are really weaving, like, a tapestry of horrors for the U.S. government.
It is the quilt of the American conservative movement and the way in which it has embedded itself in the bureaucratic structure of the state.
Right, and it's everywhere. And all these topics that we are discussing, they have overlap with each other. So Mandate 6 was just 156 pages, not the thousands of pages.
Okay.
And some politicians were like, okay, this seems easier, but some... like journalists, for example, like conservative journalists were like, this is like a Cliff's Notes edition of the regular mandates. What's going on?
So this is like the Heritage Foundation. Sometimes like a band gets too big or whatever and they start doing like concept albums. And then like you start reading their next album. They just went to a cabin in the woods. That's how they're going to record it. And it's going to be super back to basics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they're just like, no, we're stripping it down. So they also, around this time, were trying to start something called Heritage Action, which is like an activist arm of the Heritage Foundation. And the communication director for that, this guy Dan Holler, said from 2003 to 2007, our donor base grew astronomically. It went from $250,000 to $600,000 just from those direct mail type campaigns.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, no. So these aren't dollar amounts. These are people. So it went from 250,000 donors to 600,000 donors.
So, and these are the housewives sending their $2 or whatever.
I mean, and also it's your Fortune 500 companies, but most of them just are average people. Yes. Yeah. So Holler said at that time, Heritage's goal stated was, quote, to push the policy discussion as far to the right as possible. So they really are, which was Fuellner's goal, right? He was like, I want to change what it means to be an American conservative, right? And that's what they're doing. They're like, we are making it so the way to be an American conservative is to be as far right as possible, and anyone to the left of us is not a Republican.
And I think, right, this is something that I think about a lot with, like, the, like, older Rockefeller type conservatism, which is that unless you happen to be an actual honest to God Rockefeller, there's no reason to be that kind of conservative. Like, right. You have, like, no ideological stake in, like, we should do financing for the oil industry better in Texas.
Yeah, it doesn't rally the masses.
Right.
It doesn't speak to the average conservative, no. But I do feel like this kind of quote from Holler is a precursor to, like, what would then later come and be Trump-era Republicanism, right? You're just pushing the conversation as far to the right as possible, to levels to the right you didn't even know were okay to go to in our current political climate. So, by 2010, the Heritage Foundation had that activism arm, started Heritage Action, right? Meanwhile, Fuellner here's a talk given, like, at a lunch by Senator Jim DeMint of South Carolina. It's this meeting of conservative, like, it's a dinner group, I think, in Georgetown. He hears Jim DeMint talk, and he's like, this guy's really good. So Fuellner goes up to DeMint afterwards and is like, hey, why aren't you running for president? And DeMint tells him, this is so smooth, DeMint says, the only thing I've ever wanted to be president of is the Heritage Foundation.
Ooh.
Yeah, real smooth.
I'm going to try to figure out how to use that as a pickup line.
I want to be president of your, I want to heritage your foundation. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's in there. We'll figure it out. So in 2011, Representative Paul Ryan is drafting his conservative budget proposal, and this tells you how cemented Heritage Foundation is into the world of politics. He sent it to the Congressional Budget Office. He also sent it to the Heritage Foundation to be scored. So for them to look at the budget and be like, yeah, this is good or bad. So by this point, Heritage's Center for Data Analysis had actually become comparable in its capacity to handle things like this to the White House's Office of Management and Budget and to the Congressional Budget Office both. They were like, had the in-house analysts and tools to be able to accomplish the same things as the White House and Congress. And they also, Heritage Action, were doing that thing where they were creating those scorecards, remember, for politicians. And when it came time to score one Senator Jim DeMint of South Carolina, they gave him the highest possible rating you could get.
He got an A++.
In being a Republican. So they are like, this is our guy.
Can you imagine, like, that being, like, the apex of your life?
Is getting the highest score possible from the Heritage Foundation.
What, like, if there is justice in this world, that man will wind up at the pearly gates, and St. Peter will look at him and be like, yeah, it's like when you go to college or whatever, and, like,
you peak.
Well, and your professors are like, yeah, I don't give a shit what you got in, like, 10th grade geometry or whatever. Who cares?
Right.
Right. Like, St. Peter is like, the Heritage Foundation, that doesn't matter here.
Right.
You studied for the wrong test.
Yeah. It's got to be, I wonder though, like, I feel like DeMint was into this because this really is a start of kind of a courtship.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So 2012 comes around, and a researcher talking about the Heritage Foundation and its, like, role and influence in Washington is like, the Heritage Foundation is where policy agendas are set and tactics are developed hand in hand with Hill staff. So everyone was like, they're running the show. And in the 2012 elections, Heritage Action received $500,000 from Freedom Partners, which was a consortium of donors founded by the Koch brothers.
Are you saying Koch?
Are you saying Koch? What do you say?
Okay,
Koch brothers?
Kenneth Koch, the lovely, very gay poet, insisted upon Koch.
Yeah.
The Koch brothers, I
Koch.
believe.
They don't want to be called Koch?
They're not Kochs.
I'm calling them Koch.
Yeah.
I think we should do it. I think they're Koch. In more ways than one, they're Kochs. So yeah, whatever. However you want to pronounce these guys. I feel like most people say Coach.
I've heard Koch.
Okay,
That's
Koch. I feel like that's definitely made up. We need some Germans. It feels German. Is it German?
I'm sure that's right. Like, there's a K in that.
Yeah, this feels German. If you're German, how are we supposed to be pronouncing this? Let us know. But, you know, basically, they're getting some big-time people giving them money to execute their plans. And the Koch brothers, they are like billionaire libertarians for anybody who doesn't know. So they're just like, these
whose father was like a John Bircher.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's all these same right-wing people. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. We all make money. So also, when talking about this, though, people were noting that basically what was happening is that Republicans in Congress were outsourcing their policy work to the Heritage Foundation. Yeah. So, like, I'm supposed to draft a policy? Boring. And the Heritage Foundation is like, oh my God, don't worry about that. Eat this sweet, sweet Chick-fil-A and we will draft it for you. And they're like, oh my God, thanks. And that is how this relationship is going. So this, though, kind of, you know, Obama is winning his second term. Fjellner is 70 years old.
He's bombing the shit out of Syria and Libya. He, like, a heritage... Wait, wasn't the, like, ACA, like, that was, like, a part of, like, a Heritage Foundation proposal at one point?
Oh, yes, it was. And we're going to talk about it in a second.
Okay.
So, but this is a time of kind of inactivity for the Heritage Foundation. Like, they haven't had a guy in the White House 4 years, and they're gonna not have a guy in the White House for another 4 years, and Fjellner's like, I'm 70, do I really want to be doing all of this influencing? So it seemed like the right time for him to retire. But, you know, during his tenure, he'd accomplished a lot. Heritage Foundation had helped organize and underwrite anti-tax, anti-government, and anti-Obama movements, even creating its own lobbying organization.
I did, like... Do I seem to recall that they had been somewhat involved in the Tea Party?
Yes, they were somewhat involved in the Tea Party. That is totally accurate. And for anybody who doesn't know, the Tea Party was an AstroTurf fake grassroots movement of just like a bunch of like super right-wing weirdos who didn't want anything to be taxed.
And who all dressed up like it was the Boston Tea Party of 1770 whatever.
Yes, it was very theatrical. It was very theater kid.
It felt, but it was like people, because when you saw the pictures, it was like, oh, these people beat up theater kids.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, so like whatever demons they are exorcising by wearing a tricorner hat and knickers is like, I feel like would be better or done at like a psychologist's office.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was a wild time to be alive at the same time as the Tea Party.
This was, Ron Paul was big.
Yeah, this was a real weird time politically. Occupy was happening.
Which was kind of also, it was like, what if Ron Paul were in the DSA?
Yes, it was all very, very weird. It was a politically weird era.
I told you my thing about, like, saying to young people, I graduated in 2008 from college. Yeah. And then them looking at me like, what does that mean?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And we graduated into the Great Recession. Everything was weird.
Trying to explain the politics of the Obama era, and second term Bush,
a lot was happening.
It feels like you've entered a fugue state.
Yeah, I mean, a lot was happening. No, it's so true. So this was a very transitional era for the Heritage Foundation. And what's interesting is that Obama's policies were not that different than George W. Bush's. Bush's. He increased a lot of those things. He bombed more. He
bailed out large companies after the recession.
He ended up increasing anti-immigration measures along the border. He deported more people than any president ever
the Great
had.
Deporter, right?
Yeah. 1 year under Obama, we were responsible for like 80% of the bombs that happened around the world. Like.
And I'm just going to say about the Dream Act, whatever the, like, executive order was, like, it was good for some people, undoubtedly. The amount of moralizing bullshit that was, like, written into that, where it was, like, if you were next to someone smoking weed once in college and you were undocumented...
You're out of here.
You're out of here.
Yeah, so, you know, Obama, he just carried through a lot of Republican kind of measures. My general take is that every president is seeing how much they can get away with, and the next president just yes-ands it. But it was not really a room.
You know, he was from the city of Second City. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Oh.
The city of improv, Chicago.
Is that Chicago? I had no idea. Yeah, but I think that what's interesting is that the Heritage Foundation couldn't really connect with a conservative base through this because the Democrats, of course, are we dropped bombs on everybody and killed them, did a war crime, tee-hee, but here's our pronouns, right? So the Heritage Foundation is like, well, we don't have the political messaging ability for Democrats because Democrats are socially more liberal than us.
No, okay, my take on this has always been like the Democratic position has always been we're going to do bad things abroad and at home.
Yes.
And then we're going to wring our hands and be like, oh, but we had to, and we feel so bad.
Oh, yeah, it was so sad.
Oh,
yeah.
and like the Republicans are like, no, we did it, and we love it, and you should enjoy it.
Right, but they're both doing the bad things.
Yeah.
So we get to this kind of time where Fjellner's like, it's time for me to step down, basically. I don't have a lot going on right now. You know, this isn't really working for me. So he's like, I got to appoint a new president in 2013, and who's he appoint? DeMint.
Oh,
it's our guy, the guy who was like, all I want to be president of is the Heritage Foundation, and Fjellner's like,
got his dream.
Done. Yep. So, who was DeMint? DeMint had an MBA from Clemson University, and he shared this heritage belief that politics was just as much about sales and recruiting as it was about legislation or governing. He previously to getting into politics ran his own marketing company, so he totally was familiar with this. And at 47, he ran for office and he became a senator. So as a senator, he created a PAC, a political action committee, and it was called the Senate Conservatives Fund. And this was to raise money for certain conservative candidates' campaigns. And he was really good at fundraising. And that was a huge skill for the Heritage Foundation because a lot of their shit was fundraising. So DeMint had to obviously step down as senator, but he ended up getting a 400% raise by going on to be the president of the Heritage Foundation instead. His first year at Heritage, he earned $900,000.
Damn, good for. I mean, St. Peter will presumably bring that up in his.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So the first thing DeMint does when he gets to the Heritage Foundation is he's like, I'm changing everything, and it's starting at staffing. Because remember, the Heritage Foundation, their whole ideology is that it's the people you have around you. You got to make sure you're all on the same page. Staffing is the most important part of anything.
He's hiring new 22-year-olds.
He basically is. So he actually created a new level of senior staff. He demoted a bunch of the Heritage Foundation's like veteran leaders. He did go on a hiring spree of young conservatives, 22-year-olds fresh out of college for the think tank's media and internet operations. And he started going, remember they had that research department that had started that was writing all these like very in-depth research papers. They used to just like kind of put them out and Fjellner would look at some of them maybe sometimes. No, DeMint is like nothing gets released until I review it.
Oh, damn.
So DeMint is reviewing every single policy paper and he's like, what, your findings here don't align with our mission? No, we're throwing it out.
Oh, interesting.
Or your findings do kind of, but we have to edit it. We're removing certain data. You know, we're proving our point. So lots of scholars were like, fuck this, I'm out. This is dishonest. This is too much work. You're an annoying boss now. It doesn't match my vision, whatever. And DeMint's like, no problem. I'll just replace you. So he ended up bringing in this guy, Stephen Moore, to be Heritage's chief economist. And he had been a Wall Street Journal editorial writer and the founder of something called the Club for Growth, which was a lobbying group that advocated cutting taxes. So he's like, I'm bringing my buddy Stephen in. He's getting in here. So DeMint gets his team in place. And everything is kind of in turmoil, right, over at the Heritage Foundation. And DeMint's like, whatever, we're good, we're going, we're running after a target, and the target we're running towards is Obamacare.
Okay, wait, they're taking out, so Obamacare's already been passed.
Obamacare's already, it's 2013, Obamacare's out there, and DeMint is like, absolutely fucking not. We might not have our guy in power, but we can fuck with the guy who is in power. And the thing we're going after is Obamacare.
Is this when they start going after the mandates?
They start going after a lot of stuff in here. Yeah.
Okay.
So first they put up billboards. A Heritage billboard goes up in Times Square and it says, warning, Obamacare may be hazardous to your health. Then DeMint himself goes on a speaking tour of the country demanding that Republican politicians insist that Obamacare be defunded. He's like, this should be Republicans. This is your number one thing. You got to tell everybody that you want to defund Obamacare. And anybody who's like, I don't know, that's not really a priority for me. He was like, you're not really a Republican. I denounce you. We don't fuck with you. Bye.
If I recall correctly, this was the era in which, like, a lot of places, especially places with, like, Republican Congress people, were taking ACA funding.
Yes.
Like, in, like, huge numbers, and it was this huge, it was, like, one of those, like, Democratic-style liberal gotcha moments where it was, like, the West Virginia senator has ACA funding in the state, but is yelling about it in Congress.
Yes, exactly.
That kind of thing.
But part of the pressure came from the Heritage Foundation. And this is ironic for a lot of reasons. First of all, the Heritage Foundation invented basically the Obamacare plan, which you talked about earlier, David. This idea of a universal healthcare system that wasn't actually just universal healthcare, but would be based on a mandate that individuals have to buy insurance. The Heritage Foundation came up with that idea. Later on, they just ended up abandoning it. They internally also acknowledged that Obamacare could actually not be defunded. They knew it.
Yeah.
They're like, there's no way to defund this, but it didn't stop them. It was more of like an optics thing and a PR thing. And maybe DeMint throwing his weight around. Maybe being like, let's see what I can get you guys to do for me.
And I think, right, I will say, like, how do I put this? The way Obamacare worked with that fucking mandate meant that, like, a bunch of people who'd just been freeballing it,
Yeah.
right, through life, were suddenly like, now I have this fucking thing that I have to deal with.
Right, totally.
Right.
And it was helpful for people who had pre-existing conditions and did not previously qualify for healthcare.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was not what we were promised or told.
No, I'm, like, the ACA did some good things.
It
Sure.
did.
But, right, like, so there were libertarian folks who were like, cool, I'm going to get emphysema and die, but that's the life I've picked.
And now, yeah, you're not allowed to pick that life anymore. That is true.
Yeah.
So, the Heritage Action, remember the activism wing, they end up spending $500,000 on online ads, and these ads are targeting 100 Republican House members who didn't sign on to do the Defund Obamacare campaign. And so then they're like, oh, okay, you don't like us? We don't fucking like you. So then they put out all these ads targeting these Republican House members, just being like, this guy's not a real Republican.
Yeah.
He loves Obamacare. He wants to death panel your grandma.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that kind of a thing.
I missed the death panels.
I know, the death panel was a fun talking point for us for a while. So,
I was on one of those.
Oh my god.
No, in any case.
Congratulations. That's when you get a doctorate, you get to be on the death panels.
Yeah, that's what,
This is my problem for not finishing school. So, by this time, the Heritage Foundation budget is up to $80 million per year.
Damn, they've come a long way.
They've come a long way, baby. The source of funds, they're getting six-figure donations from a lot of rich Republicans, people like Rebecca Mercer, whose family foundation reportedly has given the Heritage Foundation $500,000 every single year since 2013. They've got a network now of 500,000 small donors, people who are called Heritage members, and they're just bombarded with millions of pieces of direct mail every year.
I'm assuming that at some point someone gets like a brick in the basement of the Capitol building for doing like a heritage thing.
I mean, they could sell their own bricks, actually, because they do make merch, too, and that brings them some money. They sell Heritage Foundation neckties with miniature versions of the Liberty Bell logo on it.
Oh, no. I was hoping the Heritage Foundation merch would be cool and I would, like, accidentally want it, but that sounds
that would
lame.
be like your edgelord purchase?
Yeah, you know, I have that side. I've told you about my 9/11 commemorative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that is... Well, okay, I think I told you that on Twitter, like, maybe Japan was trying to troll Americans by posting really insensitive 9/11 memes, and they were like, oh yeah, how does this make you feel, Americans? And all these Americans were like, oh no, Japan doesn't understand that we make fun of 9/11 constantly. Like, that's... And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I didn't realize other Americans were like out here making fun of 9/11 all the time, but I think young people do because they like didn't experience it. So they just saw all like the weird cult of capitalism that came about after 9/11, and it's like selling weird products about it and stuff.
All I'm saying, there is a small part of me that is a shit. Well, there is a significant part of me that is a shithead.
I mean, okay, so I sometimes want edgelord things. Like, I'm working on these designs right now at work where they're tank tops that all say like CIA operations on them. So there's one that says Operation Northwoods. There's one that's Acoustic Kitty. You know, there's one that's Long Leash Program.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I have that edgelord thing in me as well.
Everyone, I think,
Everyone has a little. So they've got their merch. It's probably not that good, but we could look it up. And they also now own multiple buildings that are flanking the Capitol on both sides. Oh, yeah.
So,
they're in there. They're in there.
Can I ask, are they doing it in, like, the neoclassical style?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to D.C. I saw it all. That's what everything looked like down there. So by this point, they had become the de facto policy arm of the Congressional Conservative Caucus. So if you're in Congress and you're a conservative, a Heritage Foundation is creating all your policy. So by 2014, DeMint starts this thing called the Project to Restore America. And this is a precursor to Project 2025. This is focused on staffing. Remember, we keep hearing this focus on staffing. They're like, the most important thing we can do is recruit like-minded conservatives for our cause. We need more people on our side. The more people we can recruit who have our same vision, the bigger of an army we can build. So Becky Norton Dunlop, who's a former deputy personnel director for Reagan, ends up coming on board and taking over this Project to Restore America, right, operating as Heritage's vice president for external relations. Now, she's an interesting character. She had come to Washington in 1973 straight from college to work for the American Conservative Union, which was a lobbying group best known for organizing this thing called the Conservative Political Action Conference. She married an aide of Senator Jesse Helms of North Carolina. Like, Jesse Helms, like, walked her down the aisle and gave her away at the wedding, which is very interesting. And she ended up working in the Interior Department, but then Congress pushed her out because she was trying to demote or fire several National Park Service employees and replace them just with people she liked better. And they were like, that's illegal. You can't do that.
That sounds right. I think I've mentioned this before. Like, my dad's, like, large grievance was that the Reagan administration defunded the Parks Department, so he lost his job as a trail builder.
Yes.
Like...
This is a little later, though. This is 2014.
No, I know, but, like, it's
yes.
continuity here.
Yeah, totally. She also had a controversial stint at one point. She was Virginia's Secretary of Natural Resources, which is funny because from what I could tell, this woman hates the environment. You know how, I want the environment to be well, but I don't necessarily want to be in it all the time. This woman is just like, fuck them trees. Like, she, hates the environment. So she was weirdly...
She wants everything to be gray laminate gentrifier flooring.
Yes, and she's just like, give me the oil. Suck the oil out of everything. That's what we want. So this was kind of her backstory, and she ends up going to Project to Restore America, and she gets to work recruiting. She's got a huge network from all these random jobs she's done. She's got groups like the Family Research Council, Liberty University, and the Council for National Policy, which is an organization that brings together advocates at all these different conservative causes. And she said, I talked to them all. You need to think about this, and you need to spread the word. If you're interested, get your house in order, talk to your spouse, and get ready, because we need to save our country. So that is what the focus of Project to Restore America is, which is really a huge precursor, along with those mandates, to Project 2025. So what Dunlop is doing, basically, is just recruiting. She's just recruiting. But the thing about this type of recruiting is that it's pretty sinister, and it's with a purpose, you know?
For some reason, I'm getting, MLM
it is
out
a
of this.
Little... I mean, she's really selling it. She's like, get ready to save our country.
She might be selling Nutralife or, Mary Kay products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. But, really what's happening here is she's just building a database of people who could be in our army, people who can be in our army, people who can be in our army, because we're going to war. So 2016, enter Trump.
Yeah.
All right. So the Heritage Foundation had a weird relationship with Trump. First of all, Trump had no personal connections to the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, no, they were into little Marco or whatever.
They were into Marco Rubio. They were into Ted Cruz. So, DeMint's PAC had raised $600,000 for Marco Rubio's 2010 Senate campaign. And DeMint and Rubio were both associated with this thing called the C Street House, which was a group residence on Capitol Hill that worked with Fellowship Foundation, which was a nonprofit organization that sponsored the National Prayer Breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
There was a Netflix documentary, I think, about all this stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I saw something about the National Prayer Breakfast and was like, not liking the government gives me, like, a very easy way with stuff like that, where I'm like, that makes sense, it sucks.
Yeah, that makes sense. It totally makes sense. Also, though, Ted Cruz. DeMint's PAC had given nearly $1 million to Ted Cruz for his 2012 Senate run, and he had been a featured speaker on that Defund Obamacare tour that DeMint went on.
Mm-hmm.
So, these would have been more likely to be the Heritage Foundation guys at this point, not Trump. And a lot of people were like, yeah, when Trump first came to Washington, he did not have very many friends. He didn't know people. He wasn't a Washington guy.
But that's, I mean, right, like, Reagan was a different situation because he'd been governor and had spent a lot of time kind of in, like, grassroots right-wing organizations.
Exactly.
But
and he had Nancy.
He was a dumb bunny.
Yeah. And he had Nancy, and Nancy was connected.
Yeah.
So, this, though, the Heritage Foundation was like, okay, we got this Trump figure coming in. Let's see what happens. So, the Heritage Foundation's lobbying arm, Heritage Action for America, ended up at first not being into Trump. They gave him a bad review on that presidential scorecard. They were like, absolutely not. And they basically said Trump isn't even a conservative. Like, he promised to punish American companies for exporting jobs, but, like, we're the Heritage Foundation. We support free trade. We have for 45 years. Our biggest donors do. Like, we want open borders for business. Like, this guy is not a conservative. And Heritage Action's chief executive, Michael Needham, called him, Trump, a clown on Fox News and said, quote, he needs to be out of the race.
Yeah.
So at first, they were not backing this guy. And the New York Times said that Trump claimed to want to shake up the Washington establishment. The Heritage Foundation is a Washington institution. It's large. Stately headquarters sit just a few blocks from Capitol Hill. So you're like, yeah, no shit, they weren't fast friends. They were, Trump was like, I'm coming for the establishment. And the Heritage Foundation was like, we are the establishment and you are goofy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like reams and reams of paper have been written about Trump's, like, faux populism or whatever in a way that, like, I'm pretty bored of and annoyed by.
Right.
But, like, the basic thing is that, like, he had, like, a marketer's intuition about how to campaign for president.
Yes, he really did.
Yeah.
So, all of this changes January 2016, 2 weeks before the Iowa caucuses. DeMint is at, like, maybe this dinner. He's sitting around with some other politics guys, and he's like, I think Donald Trump is going to win the presidential nomination. I think he's going to be the guy, and I think we got to go all in on him.
Yeah.
So, obviously, DeMint is correct, and Trump doesn't just win the presidential nomination, he wins the presidency. And he begins to, at this point, settle into this mutually beneficial arrangement with Heritage. So, right away, Ed Corrigan, who was vice president for policy promotion at the Heritage Foundation, joins Trump's transition team. Remember, they're like, okay, we're transitioning into office now, as like a senior leadership point or role. I tried to combine them and say poll. So the Trump team, they don't know anybody, remember? So they don't have enough connections to staff like over 4,000 government positions that they're supposed to appoint right when they assume office.
And this was, right, for reasons to do with Mitch McConnell, but also with, like, I want to say some, like, administrative mishigas in the Obama administration.
So that's true. Yeah, the Obama administration had left a bunch of seats kind of open, and usually there's 4,000 seats that have to be, like, kind of filled anyway, staffed anyway. But yeah, so in comes Trump. He doesn't know 4,000 politicians.
Yeah.
But you know who does?
The Heritage Foundation.
The Heritage Foundation. Lists. Yeah, they've got this list. Remember the project to the staff and the blah blah with the lady. So, the New York Times reported in summer of 2014, a year before Trump even declared his candidacy, the right-wing think tank had started assembling a 3,000-name searchable database of trusted movement conservatives from around the country who were eager to serve in a post-Obama government. The initiative was called Project to Restore America, a dog whistle appeal at the so-called silent majority that foreshadowed Trump's own campaign slogan.
Okay.
So, the New York Times is like, these two things were just, like, happening concurrently, and it was a match made in heaven. And they said Heritage's recommendations included some of the most prominent members of Trump's cabinet. Scott Pruitt, Betsy DeVos, whose in-laws endowed Heritage's Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Religion and Civil Society.
And whose younger brother was the BlackRock guy.
Yeah, it's just like, his family's wild.
Like,
yeah.
That.
Also Mick Mulvaney, Rick Perry, Jeff Sessions, so many people. These were all Heritage people. Dozens of Heritage employees and alumni ended up joining the Trump administration, like at least 66 of them. And there were some people who were like awaiting Senate confirmation still at the time that that poll was taken. Heritage had basically been working towards this moment for like 50 years, and they finally got it. Like, remember with Reagan, they were like, our guys are in the room.
Yeah, and now they were like, our guys are the room.
Our guys are the room, exactly. So basically, the Heritage Foundation was like, it doesn't really matter if Trump's politics align 100% with ours. They probably don't, but we're able to staff our guys everywhere else. So it doesn't...
And Trump doesn't really know what he's doing aside from our guys.
Right. So they're like, okay, Trump has this thing about not sending jobs offshore, whatever. We've got our Heritage guys, working for the EPA, and they're like opening up offshore drilling on federal lands. We've got our guys in there opposing the mandatory labeling of genetically engineered food. We've got our guys in there reducing regulations for for-profit universities, or in there revoking these Obama-era executive orders about like green energy mandates. They're in there phasing out federal subsidies for housing. They are in there trying to drum up anger and frustration against gay marriage. They're trying to get in there and say that it's actually legal to discriminate based on sexual orientation or gender identity. So this was what was going on under the first Trump thing. Heritage was like, Trump, yeah, whatever, he's tacky and declassé, who cares? He'll get our guys in the door, and our guys will do all the stuff we want. So Dunlop, the woman who had kind of done that staffing campaign, right? She said, the watchword of personnel is get people who you want on the bus, then figure out what seat you want to put them in.
This seems like, right, I'm assuming we're about to talk about the Supreme Court.
No, actually, we're not really going to talk about the Supreme
because,
Court.
right, like, wasn't it, like, a Heritage Foundation list that Trump was pulling his nominees off of?
I mean, Trump is using only Heritage lists for all of this. So it's absolutely everything.
And, the like, rollback of Roe v. Wade stuff, like, all of that, it came out of like the giant shift in the Supreme Court, which again Mitch McConnell had a lot to do with by like refusing to hold hearings for Supreme Court nominees.
Yeah. But all of this, okay, so this is important when we talk about Project 2025 in a little bit. These guys have been this involved in trying to execute these super conservative ideologies for decades, and they've been doing it. Like, you're right. Like, the reason Roe v. Wade was overturned is because of the Supreme Court justices in place who were Heritage Foundation guys. And, these things do go back in, like, decades, and they take a lot of time to set up, and then we see them come to fruition years and years later. And that's kind of what Dunlap's talking about. She's like, we just got to get our people in the door. Get people who you want on the bus, figure out what seat you want to put them in later. Just like get our people in who are on the same page as us, and we'll put them wherever we can. So Heritage's staff on the transition team, they tried to basically put forward every single Heritage employee they could find who was interested in working for the administration. And they're like, we'll put them in policy jobs, we'll put them in management jobs, we'll put them in admin jobs. And some of the types of people this included were like Matthew Beckham, who was a project administrator in Heritage's communications department, who joined the transition, and his job was to vet ambassadors and diplomats. And he said any list we touched made sure had as many Heritage people as possible.
Yeah.
So everyone's coming from here. One of Heritage's labor economists, James Shirk, was an advocate of rolling back labor rights. He joined the White House's Domestic Policy Council. David Kreutzer was a co-author of a Heritage policy paper that argued that no consensus exists that man-made emissions are the primary driver of global warming. He joined the EPA. He's a good one to have in there. Yeah. Roger Severino, the director of Heritage's DeVos Center for Religion and Civil Society, he had opposed extending civil rights protections to gay, lesbian, and transgender people. What did he join? The Department of Health and Human Services to run its Office for Civil Rights. Yes, you cannot make this stuff up. So the Heritage Foundation is like, basically, whoever we can get in there to destroy shit, that's what we're doing. So there's Sean Ducey, who was a former Heritage employee who had worked at the think tank's training and recruitment center. he ended up joining the Presidential Personnel Office, which is a little-known agency, but they're responsible for recruiting and vetting appointees for the executive branch. And he joined as their deputy director. Mm-hmm. We had DeMint actually calling Mike Pence personally to argue for Mick Mulvaney to get staffed. He was a former congressman whose political career was basically jump-started by DeMint years earlier in South Carolina. And Mulvaney ended up becoming the director of the Office of Management and Budget. And Fuellner himself, remember the guy who founded the Heritage Foundation? He ended up becoming the head of domestic policy for the Trump transition.
Wait, this guy's got to be like 80 years old at this point.
Yeah, he had retired at 70 a few years back, but he came back to work for the Trump presidency. And he ended up charting the direction of the EPA, the Department of Agriculture, and a bunch of other agencies.
So, drill, baby, drill.
Drill. Yeah, that's what they're doing. So we get to 2017 now. And Trump is so grateful. He is publicly expressing his gratitude to both DeMint and the Heritage Foundation in particular in a speech he gives at the NRA. He says, these people have been fantastic. They have been real friends. Still, DeMint is not quite fully popular at the Heritage Foundation. He has done a lot of bold, sweeping moves. He kind of lacked predictability. 2 weeks before Trump went to the Iowa caucuses, he changed his tune on Trump, and he's like, we got to get on this guy's good side. He's firing people. He's losing old people who've been there forever. He's bringing on new people. So, everybody at the think tank is kind of divided on DeMint. They're either his guys or they're old guard guys who don't like the changes he's made.
He's turning the Heritage Foundation into like reality television thing. Right, where it's like, oh, you're voted off the island, everything's chaotic over here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So he ends up getting ousted by like the board, at the Heritage Foundation. And he gets actually, at first this is kind of funny, they like put together a committee of people to find the new president of the Heritage Foundation. And they end up just deciding that the woman who led the committee, Kay Coles James, would be the president.
Is this not always how it goes? Listen, Joseph Stalin. I'm just saying.
She's just like, I'm just gonna find the next. Oh, it's me. Oh, yeah. So she was unique though because she was a black woman who supported Donald Trump and was a Republican.
That was a type.
It was, but lots of people said anytime they would go somewhere, she would be the only black person sometimes and the only woman sometimes, and certainly always the only black woman. So she was from Richmond, Virginia, and she was like, I had an absentee father growing up. My mother was on welfare, and that's why I love bootstrap ideology. So she served under Reagan and George Bush, and she was the director of the Office of Personnel Management for George W. Bush. Personnel Management, sorry. She worked for lots of different conservative organizations, including Pat Robertson's Regent University. She served on the board of Focus on the Family.
Okay, cool.
Anybody who doesn't remember, evangelical group known famously for opposing abortion rights, opposing premarital sex, and just like hating gay people.
They were the ones
super homophobic.
They were the ones who did like the weird conferences at evangelical churches through my stint in the evangelical church.
Really?
I guess I can't even say my stint. My stint proximal to the evangelical church.
I mean, I think you were in it.
I was at it. I never actually. I think I went to like one evangelical service. I guess I had to go to like the church services through the school.
That's so wild.
But yeah.
Wow. So this woman in 2005, she ended up doing a brief stint working for a defense contracting firm, and the founder Mitchell Wade, like a year later, had to plead guilty to bribing a congressman for more than $1 million.
I'm sorry.
And she had worked there.
You said $1 million.
Yeah.
With an M.
$1 million.
Okay, for some I heard a bit like.
No, yeah, $1 million. $1 million okay. And M. Yeah. So that didn't work because her boss did a bribe. Oops. So then she was like, I'm going to start my own nonprofit called the Gloucester Institute. And she was like, it's a leadership training center. And this is kind of what she was doing and also working at the Heritage Foundation when she got this huge, massive lifestyle change, pay increase, and got to be the president of the Heritage Foundation. So at Heritage, she was kind of a better fit because she actually really publicly supported Trump. She loved his tax cuts. He liked all the deregulatory stuff. She liked his crackdown on illegal immigration. She liked that he chose John Bolton to be the national security advisor because that guy was like really hardline.
That was the guy. He was an anti-China guy, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
She also liked that he was rolling back funding for a bunch of federal programs, including the children's health insurance program. She's like, yeah, thank God we're not giving those children health insurance. Fuck them. She also liked that there was this executive order he had that would curtail the amount of time that a federal union representative could spend helping colleagues file claims for workplace grievances that included sexual harassment. She's like, don't let them complain. You're totally right. You're right, bestie. Do that. So James's goal at Heritage was kind of to make Heritage Foundation go woke. She was like, we could be reaching a more diverse group of people than just white men.
Like, there are black and brown conservatives.
We need to get them on our side.
Yeah. Okay.
She said, if you talk to anyone about shaping the future of this nation, they will tell you that there are certain demographics that must be touched. Millennials, women, and minorities. And so I tell people that unless our ideas are reaching those demographics, then we are going to be looking at a shrinking minority view in this country.
I kept thinking about this when you were talking about the sort of Obama era, because during, I think it was like the midterms of 2010, right? Like the Republican Party somewhat famously put out like an internal memo that was like, we're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Because like black and brown people were demographically going to make up a larger and larger segment of the voting population.
Right.
And the Republican Party, like, their brand was racism.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So it was losing, like, well, fuck, how are we going to do this? And there was I think it was under Paul Ryan, like a huge attempt at rebranding.
Yeah,
right?
No, that does make sense.
So it feels like the Heritage Foundation is sort of tracking the larger, or like is in lockstep with the larger, like, Republican trajectory.
Yeah, but it doesn't go well for them.
Okay.
Yeah. So January 2018 is the first year anniversary of Trump's inauguration. And Heritage is like, yay, Trump, we love you. Our new chick's in here. She loves you. And they make this booklet called Blueprint for Impact. And that promotes how much of Heritage's agenda Trump had already embraced. They were like, Trump, after his first year in presidency, did 64% of our agenda. Which is wild, because remember, Reagan only did 60%. So Heritage's director of Congressional Executive Branch Relations, Thomas Binion, actually went on Fox and Friends to talk about the report and be like, oh, we're so proud. Donald Trump has already done 64% of our plans, and we are just blown away by his performance. And the president saw this happen and then tweeted, the Heritage Foundation has just stated that 64% of the Trump agenda is already done, faster than even Ronald Reagan, which is not what they said.
Okay.
It was just like a weird, funny thing.
I am not looking forward to the media cycle of Trump returning to
the spotlight.
Oh, boy.
It's gonna be something. We are getting a little long in this episode, so I feel like what we're gonna do is we're gonna get all the way up to Project 2025, and then next week's gonna be a Project 2025 episode.
Okay.
So, Donald Trump and the Heritage Foundation, they're building a little bond, but by 2019. There's trouble in paradise.
Uh-oh.
Because it turns out, remember how the Heritage Foundation was like, yeah, we don't agree with him all the time on everything, but like, whatever. He's
gonna do some like weird-ass protectionist bullshit with China, isn't he?
It's a little bit that, actually. But it's the opposite of that. Like, the Heritage Foundation is more cool with China.
Yeah, no, I guess what he's going to do, like, this was the tariff.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. No, you're right. No, I misheard you, yeah. So they are having a lot of problems like that. The Heritage officials are like, we have always said that the government should not have big deficits, but Trump added nearly $8 trillion to the national debt, and that was the most any president's ever added. Trump also imposed these, again, like you were saying, controversial tariffs on foreign countries, and Heritage is like, we're the free trade guys. Why are you restricting this?
There were, like, weird, like, symbolic, like, we're, like, doing tariffs on Jack Daniels things in like a lot of countries. Yeah,
so then Trump ended up also kind of attacking the Silicon Valley rich guys, and the Heritage Foundation was like, those guys pay us. They give us money. Like, stop that. And also, Heritage Foundation was kind of mad that Trump was just like, not only with tariffs, but just like blanket attacking China.
Yeah, I think it was John Bolton who was like it went from like weird ass economic nationalism to like, okay, you're just being racist now.
Yes.
Kind of shit.
So in 2019, the difference between the Heritage Foundation and Trump is so obvious that Tucker Carlson goes on television and says the Heritage Foundation no longer represents the interests of conservatives, at least on the question of tech. And he ended up criticizing a Heritage report that was rejecting government intervention that would punish tech companies for removing conservative speech. So this is major because the Heritage Foundation is like, oh, we fucked up. Like, Tucker Carlson, Donald Trump, this is what being a Republican is now. And not only are we not able to shape it, we're out of the loop. Like, we are no longer what being a Republican is all about.
We thought we were the room. It turns out, like, that's one room in a giant mansion now.
Yes, exactly. So this is pretty bad. 2020 comes around. By this point, the Trump people kind of seem like they've had enough of the Heritage Foundation. So the Washington Post reported in 2020, Tucker Carlson included James, the new woman who was in charge of the Heritage Foundation, in a roundup of conservative leaders who he said joined the left's chorus, right? And he's like, the problem, twofold with this woman. First of all, she did not denounce the violence, quote unquote, and property destruction that the right was so mad about at the protests surrounding the murder of George Floyd.
Is the George Floyd. So we're like, we're in pandemic.
We're in pandemic,
times.
And that's relevant for a couple reasons. I mean, first of all, the George Floyd thing, James, she is black. She wrote an op-ed for the Fox News website in May of 2020 saying that, quote, she does not condone the violence spreading across this country in response to Floyd's horrific killing, but she also condemned the ugly racism that stains our nation's history and afflicts us like a cancer of the soul. Oh my God,
so
can you
she's
picture
like,
a Trump guy liking that?
She probably put fentanyl in some cop's McFlurry.
I mean, love that. She... You know, that's the thing. She's black. And she's like, well, I'm black, so this affects me as a black person. And the Republicans, they don't want somebody who's actually black. They want a black person who is detached from their blackness so they can tout them around on a stage and trot them around and be like, look, see, we're diverse.
I mean, they want, like, a black person who is, like, going to parrot the fucking talking points. But, like, right, is going to... They want their black friend to go on and be like, no, they're not racist.
Yeah, also they're allowed to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. So, you know, obviously they're not interested in advancing black rights or the cause of black people. And so when they're like, oh no, our new president is a black woman, they're like, this is a problem. This is a problem. And Carlson called that op-ed a long screed denouncing America as an irredeemably racist nation. And he was like, if you're a Heritage Foundation donor, you got to send your money somewhere else because we are done with them.
It does feel like with the Dement era, like the rapid shift towards Trump, there was a little bit of a, like, it's like the CIA towards the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is now towards, like, the Trump, like, faux populism thing.
Yeah.
Where they're like, hey guys, we're cool, we're hip, we're with it. Oh wait, you guys kind of got away from us.
Yes, exactly. That's totally what it is. Like, how do you do, fellow youths? Also, though, around this time, it's not like they're fully not influential. Because do you remember that weird period where Donald Trump was, like, talking all the shit about the U.S. Postal Service and, like, none of the mail was going out?
Yeah, but that's been a thing for, like, I mean... Bush,
well, that's because it's a Heritage Foundation thing.
This is why the post office is completely hobbled in their shit. They have to, like, fund their retirement thing, like, some bananas amount of time outwards in a way that no one else does.
Really?
Yeah, it's...
Well, this comes from the Heritage Foundation. They were publishing articles around this time, like, can the Postal Service have a future? And you've got no mail. Is the end near for the Postal Service? So... even as the Trump Republicans are kind of declaring war against the Heritage Foundation, now the Heritage Foundation have found themselves being like the Rockefeller Republicans, getting pushed out by the movement Republicans. Now they're the ones getting pushed out. And still, though, they do have influence and people are still listening to them. They're just kind of having like a crisis of leadership and a crisis of direction. And I think that that's the part in this that we will leave off on, and next week we will discuss what the Heritage Foundation gets into next, which is Project 2025.
And this is their comeback story.
This is their comeback story, and this is what everybody is really, really afraid of today. Everybody's been talking about this, and they're really freaked out by it. So, David, do you think there's anything that we missed in talking about the Heritage Foundation or anything you really want to communicate or get across about them?
I mean, from what you've talked about today, it seems like, right, like the degree to which it's business as usual is something I would just like to underline. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that it's not like, you know, you made jokes about the deep state or whatever, and that's very funny. But it's also like, if only it were that sinister. Right? It's so banal. It's just like, well, it's a bunch of guys in dumbass suits and, you know, eating Chick-fil-A in a basement.
Right. Yeah, that aren't elected, that we don't know their names, that we don't know what they're up to. And these are the guys making the laws that govern our country. And I think when we, like, get into the episode about Project 2025, it's hard. It's hard for me because it's the same kind of effect that it had when people were like, you have to look it up, you have to talk about it, oh my god. And I thought it was going to be something really shocking, and then I looked it up and I was like, this is just the Heritage Foundation, that's just what they do.
Yeah, I mean, right,
but it doesn't mean it's not bad.
No, I said, like, you know, the Heritage Foundation does grim and sinister things, and they tend to like the Republican Party more than the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
You know, okay, here's my hot take, and you might not agree with this.
Okay.
The Democratic Party acts like a neglected child hopelessly suing for heritage approval. Right? Like, they do all the shit that the Heritage Foundation wants.
Okay.
And they're like me, we did the ACA. Kind of like that thing that you did as a proposal. Oh my god. We're bombing Libya to Kingdom Come. Oh my god. Like, we're gonna do all the conservative shit. Why won't you guys like us?
Okay, that's really interesting. I don't agree with it. Mm-hmm. But I think it is interesting. But I think, like, really what you're just seeing is, like, the similarities for capitalism. Because, like, the Democratic Party still wants free market capitalism.
Yeah, no, I guess right.
It's one of the 4 things or whatever, the list of 5 things, the numbers, I don't know.
I guess, right, like, I was talking to a friend of mine who's an economist, and she was describing she was like, yeah, you know, Biden is going to, renew most of the Trump tax policies.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Every president is just yes-anding the one who came before them, regardless of what party they are in. And
so, like, to me, it's right, like, when I encounter sort of the Heritage Foundation, what I encounter is an affective difference.
Yes.
Right? Like, a difference in how I'm supposed to respond to the thing. Mm-hmm. More than like a specific policy difference.
Right. There's not a policy difference. The one thing I have noticed that's different when you, like, have a Republican president versus the Democratic president, I feel like, is the comfort level, the safety people have being, like, vocally bigots.
Well, it's because it's, right, I think, or at least my take was the thing about, like, the Democrats are like, oh, they'll do the bad thing and then they'll, like, hand wring about it and be like, oh, we had to because whatever, oh, we feel so bad. And we're really good people, whereas the Republicans are like, enjoy the cruelty.
Yes.
Have fun.
So I feel like when Trump was elected the first time, one of my friends who's not white was like, I mean, it just shows you what people are actually thinking. Like, you know, this is how people actually are. At least I'm glad now that people are just being honest about it. Yeah. And, like, that really is the thing. Like, the Democrat way, when you have, like, a Democrat president, people might not be as comfortable being vocally racist or making racist jokes or comments, you know, but they're still doing it. Their actions are still reflecting that. They just, it's not as socially acceptable to say it out loud. And I mean, I do also think that under, you know, hate crimes, I think, feel like they've increased under George W. Bush and under
the hate
Trump.
crime under George W. Bush, I feel like we can think about why that might have been.
Right. Yeah, obviously.
But, no,
because there was like just all of the racist stuff that came out of the Bush administration after 9/11. It was really, really terrifying and dangerous to be a brown person in the United States because of how that administration pushed this idea of fear of the other, fear of the immigrants, the enemy. And so, you know, I do think there's something to be said for that. You do see the affective difference between a Democrat or Republican. It doesn't change how people think or their values necessarily, or the culture of this place. This culture of this place is racist, and it will always be racist, but it changes what people are comfortable admitting out loud in mixed company.
The other thing, okay, this is to shift like, every time you hear about some like fringe ass right wing group that ends up becoming extraordinarily influential, there's this like the Fabian Society. Oh my god, like Marxist Leninist cells. Like, and then they end up mimicking this, like, phantasmagoric leftist organization that they believe exists.
Right.
Right? And it's like, I can't help but think, like, if only, motherfuckers, like, if only...
If only we were that organized.
There was, like, an organized... like, if... Like, that's such a... I can't say anything. It's a fantasy.
It's a fantasy. It is. Well, I think that we're at a good stopping point, and next week we will start on Project 2025. Is there anything else you want to add to the end of the episode, David?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. We did it.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. If you would like to join us on Patreon, you can find us there at patreon.com/pickmeupimscared. For $3 a month, you can access bonus content there. But if $3 a month is too much for you to spend right now, we totally get it, and we're just happy you're here. As always, you can find the sources for this week's episode just by scrolling down a bit in the description.